a sec. All right. There we are. We're live. Well, so let us start. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we can go. Well, here we are. We have the question type number 6, because if you remember, dear students, yesterday when we were in our class, we just saw until question number 5, right? And now we're going to start with type of question number 6. Fantastic, let's go. Well, this type of question, dear students, is called a detailed question, okay? And it basically asks you to, or it asks you about information stated in a small part of the passage. It only asks, what does the passage say? The correct answer does not necessarily have to be written in the exact same way as in the paragraph, but it will contain exactly the same information. I think, dear students, this is a very easy question to comprehend. Why? Because I think this is the type of question that we normally have in South America and Central America. That is to say that we normally hear, right? I think you agree with me, that when we are in the university or in high school, what professors do, is that they take a book, right? And they say, well, please read from page 20 until page 40, or from page 50 until page 70. Next week, we are going to have an exam about those pages. So we receive the book, we read it throughout the week, and when the day comes, we go to the exam and we receive a paper that says, well, in page 23, we were discussing the French Revolution, and it said that the French Revolution was caused by several factors. Please write down those factors, right? Or for example, in another question, page 35 said that there was a particular character that influenced the French Revolution, for example. Who was it, right? And they give you some options. Nicolas Machiavelli, Napoleon Bonaparte, who knows, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, whatever, right? They give you options. Then you have to, of course, respond those questions. But if you think about those questions, dear students, the only thing those questions are asking you is, what did the book say about this, right? What did the textbook say about this and this and that and that? What about this? What about this year? What about this person? That is the question. What does the book say? And that is exactly what is going to happen in this type of question. But of course, for us, it's not what does the book say? For us, the question is, what does the passage say? All right? That is what is going to happen here. Well, look at the question we have. According to paragraph 1, it says, which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? I repeat, according to paragraph 1, which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? As you can see, you can think about this question very easily in this manner. What does the paragraph say about the Cretaceous climate? That is the question. What does the paragraph say about the Cretaceous climate? Although it doesn't express it that way without wording, which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? The question is that, what does the paragraph say about the Cretaceous climate? Okay, well, let us read the paragraph before we read the questions and the responses. Paleontologists, let's say, have argued for a long time that the demise of the dinosaurs was caused by climatic alterations associated with the slow changes in the positions of continents and seas, resulting from plate tectonics off and on throughout the Cretaceous, the last period of the Mesozoic era, during which dinosaurs flourished. Large shallow seas covered extensive areas of the continents. Data from diverse sources, including geochemical evidence preserved in seafloor sediments, indicates that the late Cretaceous climate was milder than today's. The days were not too hot, nor the nights too cold. The summers were not too warm, not the winters too frigid. The shallow seas on the continents probably buffer the temperature of the nearby air, keeping it relatively constant. Here you have the paragraph. Well, Now, as I say, the question is, what does the passage or the paragraph we have read say about the Cretaceous climate, right? We have some options. Summers were very warm and winters very cold. Shallow seas on the continents caused frequent temperature changes. The climate was very similar to today's climate, or the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. Which one is the correct one? Well, recommendations for you. The only thing you must do here is to read all the necessary parts of the paragraph to find the answer. It could be the entire passage or just the relevant portion. Once you found the portion, remember the correct answer will express the same information. Maybe the words will be different, but the contents must be equal. I want to give an example here, and I think this is very important, dear students, okay? So please listen to this. Coming back to our previous illustration, remember that I told you, this is like an exam you received in high school about history that talks about the French Revolution. Imagine that a question in your exam said, who was the greatest representative of the French Revolution? And we all know that the correct response is Napoleon Bonaparte, right? Now, imagine that in your textbook, it said that Napoleon Bonaparte was a military officer. But instead of writing the military officer Napoleon Bonaparte in your response, you say the captain Napoleon Bonaparte. I ask you, will your response be wrong? Certainly not, right? Because writing the military officer Napoleon Bonaparte is basically the same as saying the captain Napoleon Bonaparte, because both terms, captain and military officer, refer to the same, somebody who was involved with what? With the army, right? So it wouldn't be wrong. And I tell you this because for this type of question, the correct answer will not necessarily use exactly the same words that the reading paragraph. Not necessarily. I mean, actually, it will never use the same words, because imagine that it says, or it uses the same words, the exact same words. It will be super easy to identify the correct answer, right? Because it will be basically reading it and comparing, okay, this is exactly the same, the correct answer. That is not going to happen. And as I mentioned, if it doesn't use the same words, but anyways conveys the same information about the topic in the paragraph, that is going to be the correct answer. Remember, you have to find the response that conveys the information about a particular topic just as it was presented to you in the reading paragraph, without mattering if it doesn't use the same exact words. The exact same words are never going to appear, actually. As I say, you have to conform yourself and you have to be satisfied with what? With a response that expresses the same information, okay? Now, wrong answers typically try to confuse you by linking some ideas found in the passage erroneously, okay? Those answers will also use some correct vocabulary, but they will not actually respond to the question. Which one here is the correct response? We have read the answers already. So which one is the correct response? The correct response in this case, dear students, is the fourth one. Climate did not change dramatically from season to season. I'm going to tell you why is this the correct answer, okay? This is the correct answer because, for example, let us think about the first option, first of all. It says summers were very warm and winters were very cold. Now, let us read the paragraph. What does the paragraph say about summer and winters? It says that summers were not too warm, nor the winters too frigid. But what does this response say? It says that they were warm and cold. So it says exactly the contrary to what the paragraph says. Therefore, this is not the correct answer. What about the second one? Shallow seas on the continents cause frequent temperature changes. This is also wrong, because if you read in the last part of the paragraph, it says that the seas on the continents buffered the temperature. Buffering is basically imitating, copying something. So they imitated the temperature of the nearby air, keeping it relatively constant. Now, as I say, the response here proposes that the seas on the continents caused the temperature changes, but this is actually the other way around. It was the climate that provoked the oceans or seas temperature. So again, this is linking the information in an incorrect manner. Wrong answer. And the same with the third one. But what about the fourth one, for example? Does the passage say this even without the same words? Yes, it says that climate did not change dramatically from season to season. How do I know that? Look at the sentence here at the end of the paragraph. It says, the summers were not too warm, nor the winters too frigid. And here at the end says that, as I told you, the seas on the continents buffered copy the temperature of the nearby air. How? Keeping it relatively constant. It's telling us that because the oceans imitated the air's temperature, the ocean's temperature were constant. So all these things, what are they telling you? They are telling you that the climate did not change dramatically from season to season, but that some sort of stability and constancy remained in that regard. That's the reason why this one, the fourth answer, is the correct one, because we are responding to the question, what does the paragraph say about the climate in the Cretaceous epoch? And what does the passage say about the Cretaceous climate? It says that the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. Maybe not with the same words, yes, noted, but nonetheless, it contains exactly the same information, and it expresses that information as it is presented in the reading passage in comparison to the other options that, as you saw, were actually incorrect and linked this information in a very, very much confusing manner, okay? Is that clear? Any question, dear students, any concern, doubt, please tell me. Santiago, Alexander, Angel, Jasmine, Paula, any question about this type of question? Tell me, please, questions? No, no questions?
No, from me.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Angel. Well, I think that no questions then. Quite easy, right? Very, very easy question. Well, let's go to the seventh. This is called negative factual information, okay? This type of question will ask you to identify something that is not textually stated in the passage. In order to complete this task appropriately, you must read the entire portion you are required to, and to pay attention to all details. Yes? Let me exemplify what you have to do in this type of question by this example. Have you ever played the game Intruder? Intruder is a very popular game. I'm not sure if you have played it as well, but it basically consists in you receiving a sheet of paper that contains a lot of pictures, for example. And by the way, those pictures are related to each other. They are, let's say, items of a whole. For example, one sheet of paper could display a lot of fruits, let's say, bananas, oranges, grapes, peaches, etc., etc. You have a lot of fruits, but among that group of fruits, you also have something that has nothing to do with fruits, as for example, a car. Because a car is a machine, right? It's not a fruit. It's not. It is not something eatable. It's a machine. It's something you use in order to transport yourself, but not to eat. It is not as such some sort of production from the earth. I don't know, right? So when you find that car among that group of different fruits images, right? You say intruder, because you found out the intruder, el intruso, right? Among that group of items. And as I say, you win that game when you find the intruder. And for this type of question, the seventh one called factual information question, that is also the case. You win and you find the correct answer whenever you find the intruder. Why? Because for this question, dear students, you're going to have a reading paragraph, right? And that paragraph is going to discuss a lot of topics and ideas, etc. And ETS is going to give you a set of different responses, possible responses, and it's going to say, 3 of these responses talked about something that was contained in the reading paragraph. They are part of the reading paragraph, but there is one answer that is an intruder. Why? Because it doesn't belong to this passage. It doesn't talk about, nor it does represent the information stated in this paragraph. And that intruder is going to be your correct answer. You have to look for the intruder in this case. All right? Let me show you. It says in paragraph 4, all the following questions are answered except, right? And as you can see, it gives you some options. Let us read this paragraph before we analyze the possible answers. It says, dissatisfaction with conventional explanations for dinosaurs, extinctions, led to a surprising observation that, in turn, has suggested a new hypothesis. Many plants and animals disappear abruptly from the fossil record as one moves from layers of rock documenting the end of the Cretaceous up into rocks representing the beginning of the Cenozoic, the era after the Mesozoic. Between the last layer of Cretaceous rock and the first layer of Cenozoic rock, there is often a thin layer of clay. Scientists felt that they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took by determining how long it took to deposit this 1 centimeter of clay, and they thought they could determine the time it took to deposit the clay by determining the amount of the element iridium, it contained. Well, we have read this passage. Now, let us read the answers. It says, all the following questions are answered. That is to say, all these statements that we're going to read are topics. And what this question is asking us is, among these topics, there are 3 that have been discussed in this paragraph. That is to say, they are part of the paragraph. But there is one that is not part of it. Which one it is? Is there something between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? Why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit the layer of clay at the end of the Cretaceous? What was the effect of the surprising observation scientists made? And why did scientists want more information about the dinosaurs' extinctions at the end of the Cretaceous? There you are. Well, which one of these statements and topics do not belong to this particular paragraph? Which one is not part of it? 3 of them are part of it, but 1 is not. Recommendations. Read the entire portion you are required to while paying attention to every detail. Afterwards, do not forget that the correct answer must not be textually stated in the paragraph. Some answers may be rationally inferred from the passage, but this doesn't collaborate to respond. Focus on textual absences. Look for what is not in this text. As I say, look for what is not part of the text, okay? Fantastic. Well, so which one, in this case, will be the correct answer? Which one is the intruder? The one that is not part of the paragraph. In this case, dear students, the correct answer, all right, would be the 4th one. Why did scientists want more information about the dinosaurs' extinction at the end of the Cretaceous? Okay, why is this true? I'm going to tell you. Because for each of your other responses, there is a part in this paragraph where such topic proposed by the response is discussed. Let me show you. For example, about the topic, is there something between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? There is a sentence, that discusses this particular topic, where, look at the middle of the paragraph. It says, between the last layer of the Cretaceous rock and the first layer of the Cenozoic rock, what happened, or what was present there? There is often a thin layer of clay. So this topic is discussed. There was something between these 2 layers of rock. What was it? It was a thin layer of clay. So this is something that is indeed part of the reading passage. Therefore, not our correct response, because in this case, we are not looking for this type of responses. We're looking for the intruder, for what is not part of the reading paragraph, not for what is part of it, okay? What about number 2? Why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit a layer of clay at the end of the Cretaceous? And there is also a sentence that explains this, and it's actually almost at the end of the paragraph. It says, scientists felt that they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took by determining, how long it took to deposit this 1 centimeter of clay, and they thought they could determine, etc., etc. As you can see, this sentence explains us that why were they interested in determining how long it took to deposit this layer of clay? Because they thought that could help them to understand how long it took for these extinctions to take place, right? This is what the paragraph is telling us. So again, this is something that is discussed in the paragraph, therefore, not the correct answer. We're looking for the intruder. The same happens for the third response. When we come to the fourth one, that says, why did scientists want more information about the dinosaur extinction at the end of the Cretaceous? Then we find that there is not actually a single sentence in this paragraph that says or that comments on the issue of why are these scientists interested in this topic in the first place. Everything we are told in this paragraph, dear students, if you noticed, is that they are interested. They want to know about these extinctions. They want to, and they have a lot of hypotheses, and they have methods, and they have techniques in order to know this, and they're looking for that and for this. But nonetheless, they never state, we are never told, why are they interested in the first place, right? Therefore, as I say, as this topic is never discussed in the paragraph, this is our intruder, and this is the correct answer, because the other three options, they are part of the paragraph. They are topics that are discussed in this case, but the fourth one is not discussed in the paragraph, okay? Because what about the third one, for example? The third one says, what was the effect of the surprising observation scientists made? And at the beginning of the passage, we received that answer, right? The effect was a new hypothesis. It says, dissatisfaction with conventional explanations for extinctions led to a surprising observation that suggested a new hypothesis, right? So all those three ones are present, are part of the reading passage, but the fourth one is not. Therefore, it's the intruder, and therefore is our correct answer. Any doubt, hesitation about this one, dear students, please tell me. Santiago, Angel, Alexander, Jasmine, Paula, what about this type of question?
In this case, it's necessary to read all the paragraph.
Yeah, in this case, it's necessary to read the entire paragraph because you're looking for something that is part or that is not part of the entire paragraph. Therefore, it is a very good idea to read the entire paragraph indeed. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, Angel left for some reason. Well, he's going to come back. What about the rest of you guys? Any question or we are fine? You're fine? Great, we're fine. Very good, let's move on then. Type of question number 8. Okay, let us discuss this one. This is called summary question. And this is very, very important. Okay, so please pay attention to this one. What about the 8th type of question? What can I tell you about this? Well, the first thing I can tell you is that this type of question asks you to select 3 or more statements that summarize, listen, the main ideas within the entire passage. I'm going to repeat that. Summarize statements that summarize the main ideas. Okay, let us wait for Angel so he can rejoin us. Great. So we were about to discuss the new type of question, dear Angel. This is the summary question. Okay, and in this type of question, you are asked to select 3 or more statements that summarize the main ideas within an entire passage. Okay, I repeat, 3 statements that summarize the main ideas within the entire passage. The entire passage, notice that. This will typically be your last question and must be responded with all the information you've grabbed from the passage. Dear students, have you ever wondered how are the questions in the exam organized, in the sense that how do they determine if your first question, for example, is going to be a vocabulary question, if the third question is going to be a reference question, if the 5th question is going to be a negative factual information question? How do you know that? Well, responding to that, I say it's completely random. How they organize that is completely random. And actually, you are not always going to receive all the types of questions in your 10 questions for each passage. Sometimes in some questions, because you have 10 per passage, right? You are not going to receive any vocabulary question. Or sometimes you're not going to receive any reference question or any inference question. That is possible. As I say, it's totally random, okay? But there is a question that is never random and that you will always receive. And that is this one, the summary question. This will always be your question number 10. Remember that for each reading passage, you have 10 questions. And the last one, the number 10, Doesn't matter what reading passage is, if the second, the third, the fourth one, if you receive the experimental version, right, or the first passage, the 10th question, because you have 10 questions per passage, right? The last question will always be this one, a summary question. And as you can see, it is going to ask you to summarize the entire reading passage. That is the reason why, dear students, you have to be responding to this question at the end. That is to say, never skip the other questions to come directly and respond in this one. Because this last question is not there for any reason. It's there because it's designed for you to respond it once you have finalized with the previous 9 questions. Trust me, it's very important that you respond the previous 9 questions and then you respond this one, the last one, okay? The number 10, as I say, will always be a summary question, okay? So please have that in mind. It's important because you're going to be summarizing the entire reading passage and you need to have an idea, a glance of what the reading passage is, okay, before you respond and summarize, okay? So please respond this always as your last question. Great. Now, let me talk about the mechanism for responding this question. This is something a little bit different from the other responses you have been facing before. Why? To begin with, look at my screen. As you can see in the middle, there is a reply box, right? There is a box here. And this box is there because in that box, you're going to be inserting some statements, as I told you, that you consider summarize the main ideas of the entire reading passage, okay? And in order to do so, let me reproduce because this is a video. You are actually going to have to, as I say, drag these responses within the reply box. In the other cases, you are always picking your responses. But in this case, you are not going to do that. You're going to drag your responses and you're going to let them fall down within the reply box. And that is how you're going to respond this question. As you can see, below the reply box, you have some statements. You actually have 6 or more statements. But nonetheless, within the reply box, you can merely introduce three statements. And each of these statements summarize something of the reading passage. The problem is that some of them summarize details. They talked about irrelevant portions and parts of the reading passage. And that is something very important because you should not drag those statements within the reply box. You have to drag the statements that summarize the main ideas of the entire reading passage, not those ones that, as I say, talked about details or irrelevant information, etc., or that, of course, confuse information. You have to read them all. Of course, you have to read the entire statements. But as I say, you merely have to introduce within the reply box 3 of them. And by the way, the order in which you introduce them, imagine that the correct responses here are A, B, C. If you introduce them CBA or BCA, it doesn't matter. If you get the correct 3 answers here, because they are organized with letters, if you introduce within the reply box the correct options, that, as I say, imagine that they are A, B, and C, but nonetheless, you introduce them in the order of B, C, A. Doesn't matter. If you get the 3 statements that are appropriate summaries of the main ideas of this reading passage, fine, you're going to get your full score. Okay, that is it. Let me reproduce again. As you can see, you have to drag, right? Drag, arrastrar, within the reply box, your responses. In this case, you'll have to pick them or you have to choose them. And as I say, you have to choose merely 3 of them, not all of them. Awesome. Let me go back a little bit. Some recommendations I have for you. This question, dear students, will require you to drag your answer to a reply box. You are not required to click on your answer, as I told you, but to drag it within the box. Don't forget this question is worth several points, and you should respond it once you have responded all other questions, okay? Now, in order to correctly choose your answers, you must be very precise in choosing, as I told you, only those answers conveying the central ideas of the passage, okay? Of the passage. That is what I told you. You merely have the option to introduce 3 of these 6 or more statements. Therefore, you have to make sure to include the ones that summarize the central ideas of the reading passage, okay? How do you do that? Well, let us discuss right now what are central ideas? What are central ideas in the first place? Let us start this discussion by stating what is not a central idea, okay? What is not a central idea? Central ideas are not those ideas that began the passage, not necessarily, not just because something is the first topic or idea mentioned in the passage, it means it is the central idea. As I say, please don't make that wrong assumption, okay? Also, central ideas are not necessarily those that ended the passage. This is actually more common. People believe that because something is at the end of the passage, it is important. Not necessarily. Not just because something is at the end of the passage, it is necessarily a central idea. It is also, by the way, not a detail. It's never a detail. Details are things that are mentioned just out of curiosity, right? Or out of, let's say, additions. The professor or the reading passage talks about it in a very rapid and concise manner because, as I say, merely complements, but never adds any relevant information to the discussion. You should never pick statements that convey or talk about details, okay? Those are not central ideas, main ideas. And this is a very important part. Central ideas are actually not necessarily the topics or ideas you remember the most. And this is important because it happened to me, dear students, when I was practicing for this, that at first I thought that main ideas or central ideas were the ones that I had on mind. That is to say, the ones that I remembered the most. And that is false, that is fallacious. Why? Because maybe you remember something, given that it was funny, given that it was hilarious, that you believed it was funny, it was curious, interesting. That's the only reason why maybe you remember it. Or maybe because you had previous knowledge about it and you just made a connection, you just had it on mind. But that doesn't mean that this is a central idea, okay? So please don't commit my same mistake. Central ideas are not necessarily what you remember the most. But now, let us discuss what is then a central idea. Central ideas are those answers that have triggered all discussion and data. You know what is the word trigger, right? It's basically a synonym of provoking. Lo que provoca, lo que inicia all discussion and data, okay? Those are central ideas. There are always some ideas, some points that provoke the passage to continue, that provoke it to include more information, more data, more discussion, more commentaries on this, on that. Those are the central ideas. And also, you must choose those ones conveying the topic that all the rest round about. Main ideas are as stars. Think about them as if they were stars. Why? Because, for example, our star here in our solar system, right, is the sun. And all the planets surround it, right? All the planets round around the sun. And that is the point that in this case, central ideas, you should think about them as being stars, as our sun, because the rest of information, the rest of characters, commentaries, data, always surround them, okay? They are not isolated, but everything surrounds them. Everything has to do with them. And that is how you can identify these central ideas, all right? And now you know what central ideas are. Remember that your responses here must be statements that summarize or mention those main or central ideas, okay? Those are the three statements you have to include and to introduce within this reply box. Not statements that, as I say, talk about any other thing, but not central ideas, all right? And remember, I'm going to reproduce once again. You have to drag them. Look at it. You take the statement, you drag it, right? With your left click, you take it, you drag it, and you let it down. And you read again, you make sure that you have chosen the correct ones, and you have, as I say, 6 of them, and you have to include merely 3, all right? Is there any question, dear students, about this type of question? Anything that I could clarify, please tell me. Santiago, Alexander? Yeah, Paula, please.
So these main ideas can be written down on the passage, or do we have to infer them?
I mean, there is not something, I'm going to say it this way. There's not something in the reading passage that says, now we're going to talk about a main idea, right? I mean, they don't tell you what is a main idea. You're not going to find a sentence that says, now we're going to discuss a main idea, right? That doesn't happen. But as I say, you identify them. You don't infer them. They are there, but nobody tells you what is a main idea. Okay, think about them that way, that they are there, but nobody tells you which of them are main ideas. it is as, I don't know, as an spy, right? Spies are there, but you never know who are the spies. You have to find some way to identify them, right? As a spies. And as I say, I gave you some manners to identify them. Look for those ones that have triggered discussion, triggered information, triggered data included in the paragraph or the passage in this case, I'm sorry, the entire passage, right? And also those ones that all the rest of topics, informations, data, etc., roundabout. That is to say, all of them are related to these topics, are not isolated, but they're all of them roundabout these main ideas. And that is how can you identify them. But as such, they are present there. Yes, they are. You don't have to infer them, but you have to identify them. I think that's the best term. Is that fine, dear Paula? Is that clear?
Yeah, and I forgot the question.
No, it's okay. Tell me. Try to remember.
Oh, okay. So for this last question, it would be enough to be able to answer it just with the information that we have previously read of the passage with the other questions, with the previous questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paula. Yes, a very good question. And I think that Paula here refers to the fact that I told you, right? We, following the charge strategy that we have discussed together, we don't read the entire passage overall. But now, be very much sensitive when you say that. Why? Because I never expressed that we are not going to read the passage. What I said that was that or that we would never read it all together without responding the questions. But the ironic, let's say, aspect of the charge strategy is that at the end, you read the entire passage. What happens is that you don't read it at the beginning without having responded to the questions, but you read the entire passage while you respond, because they always refer, right? Go to this paragraph, so you read that paragraph. Go to this paragraph, so you read that paragraph. So at the end, you end up reading the entire passage 90% of the time. Now, of course, I told you as well, sometimes you will not read some paragraphs because the questions don't make reference to those paragraphs. And maybe you are saying, if that is the case, could I maybe miss here a part in this question that asks me about the entire passage? But if I didn't read the entire passage at some point, maybe I'm going to miss a detail. That is a fair and very good question. And I tell you, you shouldn't worry about that. Why? Because the questions, dear students, the 9 questions, the prior 9 questions, the previous 9 questions to this one are designed in such a way that when you respond those questions, you're always going to find out the main ideas of the passage. They are never going to ask you questions about details, and that's it. They are going to ask you questions about those topics that refer to the main ideas of the passage. Therefore, you shouldn't worry about the charge strategy, and you should follow it. And as I say, 90% of the time, you're actually going to read the entire passage. But even if you don't read one paragraph or at a maximum 2 paragraphs of the entire passage, trust me that with the information you have collected throughout the 9 previous questions to this one, that's the reason why I always tell you, respond this question as the last question, never skip the other ones and come to this one, but respond it at the end. With the information you collected in those 9 previous responses, you will be completely able to choose the correct answers in this case. Is that fine, dear Paula?
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Very good. Any other question, dear students? Any other thing that I could clarify? No? Okay, fantastic. No questions. Let's continue. Okay, let's go with question type number 9. This is called insertion question. This question will ask you to insert an extra sentence to one of the passages you have read. When you click, okay, let me explain this very simply. Imagine this question as if ETS came to you and said, okay, dear test taker, please read this paragraph, right? And they give you a paragraph. And you read it. Oh, okay, interesting paragraph. And afterwards, they come back and they tell you, dear test taker, it happened to us that one of our writers forgot to include a sentence with this paragraph and he just left. Could you please introduce this sentence within that paragraph? And they give you another sentence. and they tell you, please make us the favor of including this sentence within the paragraph you read. So you say, okay, well, you receive the sentence, the extra sentence, and you look for the best place to introduce that sentence within the paragraph you already read. That is exactly what's going to happen here. They're going to give you an extra sentence that is not included in one of the paragraphs of your passage. And what they're going to ask you is to include it at some point of that paragraph in order to make your paragraph better. To think about that way, as if your paragraph would be incomplete without this sentence. And what they're asking you to do, what they are asking you to do is to complete it, to make it perfect with that sentence. And to that point, without your sentence, your extra sentence that you're going to insert or include in your paragraph is imperfect. But nonetheless, when you include the sentence, it's going to become perfect. So your task is going to introduce the sentence in the best possible place in order to make your paragraph completely perfect. Okay? Think about that way. Let me show you the example. In paragraph 5, it says of the passage, there is a missing sentence. The paragraph is repeated below and shows the four letters, A, B, C, and D, that indicate where the following sentence could be added. And here you have some sentences. Consequently, the idea that the ear in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. Well, there you are. That will be the extra sentence they are asking you to insert or to include within this paragraph, right? So there you have it. Now, on my right side, you have the paragraph. Let us read it together. It says, ear has not been common at Earth's surface since the very beginning of the planet's history. Because it usually exists in a metallic state, it was preferentially incorporated in Earth's core as the planet cooled and consolidated. Ear is found in high concentrations in some meteorites, in which the solar system's original chemical composition is preserved. Even today, microscopic meteorites continually bombard Earth, falling on both land and sea. By measuring how many of these meteorites fall to Earth over a given period of time, scientists can estimate how long it might have taken to deposit the observed amount of ear in the boundary clay. These calculations suggest that a period of about 1 million years would have been required. However, other reliable evidence suggests that the deposition of the boundary clay could not have taken 1 million years. So the unusually high concentration of ear seems to require a special explanation. Fantastic. So what do you have to do? You have to ask yourself, where would the sentence best fit, right? And you have to introduce it. Now, here actually they make your task very easy. They facilitate your task. Why? Because they are not asking you to introduce or insert this sentence at any point of the paragraph. No, they limit the spaces or spots where you can introduce and insert this phrase to merely 4 different spaces. And you have them marked with letters, A, B, C, and D. You can introduce this sentence in one of those spots, A, B, C, or D. It is not possible to introduce it in any of the other sentences or parts of the paragraph. So please, as I say, limit yourself to introduce it in A, B, C, or D, right? Well, some recommendations. Your objective is, in this question, is to find where can the rendered sentence best fit in the paragraph. Sometimes it will be evident to you because something will appear to lag in the paragraph. This is the first scenario. Sometimes, dear students, it's going to happen to you that you're going to be reading a passage, and because one of your questions told you, right, this answer is to be found in paragraph 3. So, okay, I'm going to read paragraph 3. So while you're reading, you read, and you're going to discover, hey, but this is weird. It seems like a sentence is missing here, because you're going to notice like the reasoning train, the connection of words, the context is disrupted. And you're going to say, oh, what a weird thing. Apparently they wrote it incorrectly. So you're going to say, okay. But later you're going to discover that that absence was actually on purpose, that indeed there was something missing. They basically took off that word, and they did it because they wanted you to reintroduce it later on in this question. When that happens to you, that something is missing, it's going to be super easy to respond to this question. Because as I say, they merely take it off and they want you to reintroduce the sentence, okay? If that happens to you, if that is the scenario you receive, fantastic. You just read, and whenever you perceive that disruption, that perturbation of the natural order of words and sentences, you say, okay, it comes here, it goes there, right? Fantastic. Now, there is another scenario. Likewise, paragraphs often sustain themselves without the alluded sentences. That is to say, they make sense of themselves and they stand by themselves completely alone. They are not going to be missing something. They are going to be complete paragraphs. Nothing is going to be missing. When this happens to you, you will have to find where does the sentence ETS gives you complement the paragraph harmonically. That's why at the beginning I told you, think about this as perfecting your paragraph, not as completing it, but making it perfect, perfecting your paragraph. Let's say that without the sentence, your paragraph is not perfect, it's imperfect. But nonetheless, when you include it at some point, it's going to become completely perfect. So as I say, if you receive this scenario in which the sentence or the paragraph, excuse me, appears to stand by themselves, to say, okay, it doesn't sing as if this were lacking something, not really. So I guess I don't have an idea where to include my sentence. If that happens to you, as I say, look for the space or the spot where this sentence can complement the paragraph to perfect it, to make it better. Okay, that is what you have to do if you receive this case. And I think that this illustration that we are analyzing right now actually serves that purpose, and it's part of that scenario, that the paragraph, if you read it with me, makes sense, right? It's completely logical. It doesn't seem as disruptive or something. It seems very much natural, well connected, well written, but we are giving another sentence and they're asking us, please introduce it. So where are we going to introduce that sentence? As I say, where it complements, where it makes it even more perfect, okay? Now, in order to correctly choose your answers, you must choose a place within the paragraph where your sentence does not repeat already mentioned information. That is a very good criteria. If you repeat information, that is not the place. Moreover, where it doesn't disrupt the reasoning train of the portion, as I told you, you must include it where it doesn't disrupt, but it actually helps you to connect it, to make it more organized, to make it perfect. That is what you have to look for. Your objective will be to fill a missing part or to complement where the context allows you to. No more than that. Well, here you are. So this is it. Now let us see. Where would the sentence best fit? What is the correct answer here? A, B, C, or D? This sentence, dear students, could be better introduced in option C. Okay? It's option C, and I'm going to tell you why. As I told you, we're looking for a place where we make our, where we complement our paragraph, okay? Where we make it even more perfect. Now, what happens? If you read with me from, well, if you read with me the entire paragraph, first of all, you notice that this is about a theory, right? That says we are trying to explain how much or how much iridium is present in our planet, and we believe that all the iridium was brought here by meteorites, right? That fell down to our planet, etc., etc. And that is what the paragraph is about. Now, at some point, especially from the spot A until spot C, this question begins to be questioned. The paragraph casts doubt upon this theory because it is said that these meteorites had to fall down on our planet in a period of 1 million years. Nonetheless, in spot B says that in paragraph, in the spot or the sentence A tells you that is not very likely. But from sentence B on, it happens that it tells you there is actually evidence that suggests that it was impossible for meteorites to fall down on our planet and to render and to give us this quantity of iridium in that period of time. So if you notice in this part of the paragraph, it is as if they were giving us an argument. You know what is an argument, right? An argument is basically two premises, right? This and this, A and B, and therefore C, a conclusion. So this A and B are as if they were premises. It's very unlikely that meteorites fell down on our planet in 1 million years, and there is actually contrary information or evidence that says that it was not possible for these meteorites to fall down on our planet in 1 million years. So we have two premises, two arguments, but we don't have a conclusion. If you notice, after we receive that information, it says, so the unusually high concentration of air seems to require a special explanation. It moves on to another topic. It says, okay, we're not going to discuss this anymore. Let us discuss about another hypothesis, theory. We have to explain this. But there is no conclusion. And if you read this sentence, dear students, I think that it is very easy to identify. It is a conclusion, right? It says, consequently, right? Por lo tanto, en consecuencia, the idea that the air in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. So I told you, in sentence A and B, we have premises, but we don't have a conclusion. And we don't need a conclusion. As you can see, the paragraph is very good without the conclusion. But as I say, we have to complement. We have to make it even more perfect. So how can we complement? By adding the conclusion after the premises, right? If they tell us that it's very unlikely to have meteorites in 1 million years, and there is actually evidence against that phenomena, conclusion. Consequently, the idea that air in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. And something else, as I told you, after spot C, it moves on to another topic. And tell me if that is not exactly what you do when you make a conclusion. For example, imagine that you are arguing that aliens do not exist. So you say, aliens don't exist because of this and this and this. And you say, okay, consequently, in conclusion, aliens do not exist. What do you do next? You move on to another topic, right? So then you say, okay, we're going to discuss unicorns now, right? So we're going to discuss this. So because you finalized, you concluded something, you made a conclusion. And what happens here? After C, where our sentence is going to be included, it says, so the unusually high concentration of air seems to require a special explanation. It moves on. So it's the perfect place. It complements, it doesn't disrupt the reasoning train. It makes the paragraph even better. It's a place, okay? And this is exactly what you have to do. In every single time, ask yourself, where could I complement? Think about the context and introduce this, where it's going to complement and help the premises to make more sense and to have a perfect paragraph. Any question, dear students? Anything that I could clarify here? Tell me, please.
Should we read the whole paragraph in these type of questions?
I mean, you can just read maybe the spots if you want. It wouldn't be a bad idea. I normally read the entire paragraph because I try to have like a general picture of what they are discussing. And that sometimes helps me, as you saw, to understand where could I fit this sentence because of the context in which it is placed. So I would recommend you maybe to read the entire paragraph better. But if you are, let's say, running out of time, it is sufficient for you to read the immediate context, right? One sentence before the places, you can just read. Yeah, is that fine, dear Paula?
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Very good. Any other question, dear students, any other thing? No, no questions? Right. Rapidly. Last type of question. Complete the table question. This year, students, let me tell you, is the ugliest brother of the question types in this exam. Why? Because it never appears on the exam. I've taken this exam twice in my life. I've talked to a lot of people who are in this business as well, and they tell me that they never received this. Okay, as I said, this is never in the exam. Nonetheless, it could possibly appear, so you need to know how to respond. Okay, it's called complete the table question. This question will ask you to organize the ideas in certain categories with relationships. You will have to drag answers which you believe correspond to the category boxes you will have. Okay, it's very similar to the summary question. First of all, as you can see on my screen, you will have two boxes. Okay, not just one, but two boxes. And now the difference here is that you will have a title within each box. One says, for example, fauna analysis in Cuba and California. And the other one, the other title in the other box, because we have two boxes, right? It says radiocarbon dating in Two Creeks fossil forest. Think about these titles as if they were categories, okay? Categories of something. These categories belong to the reading passage we were analyzing during this whole class of dinosaurs, right? That we were reading about this very much. And in the reading passage, in the complete reading passage, because we didn't read it, we didn't read that passage completely, right? Because it was not necessary. It talks about two different experiments that scientists were doing in order to know more about dinosaurs' extinction, stuff like that. One experiment was in Cuba and California, and the other one was in the fossil forest. As you can see, those are the categories, right? What do you have to do in this question? You will have statements just as you had in the summary question. As you can see, you have it here on the right side. And what happens is that you have to read each statement, and to introduce it, you have to drag, by the way, as you did here, right? In the summary question, you have to drag, right? Like this. You have to drag these statements within the reply box. In this case, remember that you have two, you don't have one, right? Within the reply box that has the category that you consider or believe relates and connects with that statement. For example, this statement that says over 70 tests were done on fossil samples. Because I read the paragraph and the passage entirely, I remember that this statement was mentioned in the context of Cuba and California, because I said that in Cuba and California, they made a lot of tests on samples because they wanted to recreate dinosaurs, something like that. So I know that this statement belongs to that category because, as I say in the passage that we read about dinosaurs, this was connected to that experiment in Cuba and California. Therefore, it belongs to that category, right? So I would take this and I would drag it within that reply box. I wouldn't do more than that. That is exactly what you have to do in this type of question. For example, another one, this one that says radiocarbon dating tracked the fossils to 13,370 years before the present. I remember that this was mentioned in the context of the fossil forest. Therefore, you would take this option, and because you know it was mentioned in connection with that particular category in the passage you read, you take it and you drag it within the reply box. Sometimes they are going to allow you to introduce all these statements. Sometimes some of them are going to be left out because there's no space for all of them. So just choose the ones and, of course, drag them within their categories when you know that they have an actual connection with that category. If you know, but this statement was not actually related to any of these categories, don't include it, don't introduce it. Merely introduce within these reply boxes those statements that you know were connected with that category in the reading passage you read. Very simple. But as I say, you will not receive this, okay? It's super unlikely. But if you receive it, great. You are very much fortunate. So performing it is super simple, right? Because this is a very simple type of question, but almost never appears on the exam. Any question here, students, about this one? Santiago, Paula, Alexander, Jasmine, Angel. Any question about this type of question, or we clear? We clear? Yes? No questions? Okay, fantastic. No questions. Well, we're going to stop here, all right, dear students. Tomorrow we're going to practice, so please don't miss tomorrow's class. And accompany me, please, to take your assistance, all right? And as always, please, dear students, help me with your traditional responses to the poll. Know that I appreciate them very much, okay? So please help me with that. And I'm going to take your assistance. If you have any commentary, any question, please feel free to express it, okay? As I take your assistance. Let me go. Here we are. Wait, so is here present Jasmine Azucena?
Yes, present.
Thank you very much, there Jasmine. What about Reyes Andrea? Okay, Andrea told me that he wouldn't be present. What about Andrea Mercedes? Right. What about Alexander David?
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Alexander. What about Paula Andrea Coronel?
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Paula. What about Alexander David?
Present.
Oh, I already called you, right? Thank you very much, dear Alexander. Thank you. What about our dear Intiago Angel?
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Angel. What about Antesana Mateo? Okay, and the son of Sergio.
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Sergio. And finally, Kevin Alcides. And Sara Neda. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, dear students, for your kind responses. I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow in order to practice, so please don't miss it and come with all your strength and skills prepared, okay? See you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.